I came home 20 minutes early only to find my wife in our bed with another man. The shock froze me in place, but instead of confronting them, I left quietly, already forming a plan in my mind. I would let her believe I had my own affair, a cruel twist that would make her question everything. I wanted her to feel the same agony, the same betrayal. It was time to stop being the predictable husband. This wasn't just revenge. It was a lesson she would never forget. And now, it's my turn to tell you how I broke her world apart. I got home from work 20 minutes earlier than usual. Looking back, that was the surprising part. They were in our bed just 20 minutes before I arrived. Was I really that predictable? I could say I thought something was wrong or that I suspected her, but that wouldn't be true. I was shocked, frozen in place, and speechless. Angie and I had been married for 8 years. Happy years, if you ask me. Our relationship was good, lively, fun, and always surprising. We still shared special moments, too, 3 times a week. Sometimes it felt normal, but other times it was amazing. I hadn't been ignoring her, and I hadn't taken many work trips. We hadn't been arguing, she hadn't been upset, and she wasn't working late. Everything seemed fine. There were no signs to alert me. When I noticed the unusual car parked outside, I quietly entered the house. Right away, I heard the bed creaking in our bedroom, and I understood. Time felt like it had frozen. I stood there listening. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't really thinking about anything. I started to wonder if I was still breathing and if my blood was still moving in my body. Then I felt my heart beating so hard that I was surprised no one in the bedroom could hear it. I just stood there. I have no idea for how long. I heard the old door making noise along with soft sounds and quiet breaths. I could tell when Angie was close to feeling something special. Then I quietly turned and left the room. I got in my car and drove away. I found a little bar and sat at a table. I ordered a cold beer. I thought about getting another one, but decided against it. I didn't want to drink too much. I felt empty inside. I remembered reading that when someone gets hurt, like in a fight, they often feel nothing at first. The pain comes later. That's how I felt. But I knew the hurt was on the way. I sat for a long time, and sure enough, the hurt came along with messy thoughts. I pictured Angie in someone else's arms, holding tightly, her face close to his. I imagined her laughing with him, a bright smile on her face, just like when we were together. I saw them lying on our bed, enjoying each other's company. My stomach twisted, my heart raced, and my hands tightened into fists. I was a mess. I couldn't picture what would happen after the next few minutes. And they seemed pretty rough. What should I do? What does a husband do in a situation like this? What would Angie want from me? A wild idea popped into my mind. It was completely crazy and nothing like what a usual caring husband would think of. I couldn't tell if it was a good idea, a bad one, or just plain silly. Without thinking twice, I decided to go for it. Maybe it was time to be a little less expected. Are you okay? Angie looked amazing. She had just showered and looked nice. She was always beautiful. But today she seemed confused and a bit worried when she saw me come into the house with my head down and a sad look on my face. Feeling miserable, I said, "Angie," in a shaky voice. I looked at her, letting my sadness show. "Please come sit in the kitchen with me. I need to talk to you." She followed me and we sat together. I looked at her for a long time before I spoke. "Please, let me finish what I have to say without interrupting. I made a big mistake. For 3 months, I was involved with Christina Blodgett. Christina was someone we knew casually. I had never touched her, and she recently moved away with her husband, but Angie didn't know that. It's over now. I ended it. But I needed to tell you. I had to be honest with you and ask for your forgiveness." I had been looking down, but now I raised my weary face to hers. "I thought it was nothing serious, that it didn't involve you and me, because I love you so much. But I realized I was fooling myself. Every time I was with her, I was hurting you, even if you didn't know. What kind of husband would go back on his promises and be with another woman? I thought I could hide it from you, so it wouldn't hurt you. But that was a selfish lie. When I told myself to continue what I was doing, I saw that what I was doing was wrong. Being with her, no matter how casual it was, pulled me away from you. How could sneaking around behind your back not be hurtful to you and our relationship? Angie, I am so ashamed. I can't even imagine the pain this is causing you. I am really sorry. And I started to cry. My tears weren't just for my mistakes, but for the hurt I had caused her. I looked up at Angie and her face showed so many emotions. She was clearly shocked, but not in a way that showed she had no idea what to say. Before she could gather her thoughts, I continued. I want you to know something important. Christina and I were never together in our home. I could never have done that to you. I thought to myself, I hope that made her think. I'm going to pack a bag and stay in a hotel for a few days. I know you might not want me here right now. I want you to have some time to think about whether we can get past this. I love you, and I want us to stay married. But, honestly, I don't know how I would feel if you had been unfaithful to me. I'm really sorry, Angie. I'll go upstairs, grab my things, and I'll be out of here in 5 minutes. I didn't wait for her to respond. I rushed upstairs. As I packed my bag, I also secretly attached a small device to the phone line behind our bed. This device would record all the calls made from that line. I had hidden 2 small recorders in the garage. I was curious to see how Angie would react to what I had found out. When I returned to the kitchen, I quickly hid another little microphone under one of the counters. This one would send information to the second recorder in the garage. Angie looked shocked. Her eyes were wide and her mouth was slightly open. She tried to gather herself when I walked in. Alex, she started. I can't believe this. How could you? She really couldn't find the right words, and I didn't give her a chance to think of more. I'm really sorry, Angie. I'm really, really sorry. I need to leave now. I hope you won't shut me out. I'll call you in a few days and we can talk whenever you want. I care about you. With that, feeling guilty and ashamed, I kissed her on the forehead and walked out. I had never done something so strange in my life, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Well, that's not completely true. I knew I felt better than if I had just gone home and acted like the hurt husband, telling Angie what I had overheard her doing. I didn't want to hear her say sorry, explain herself, or see her cry. I didn't want to be the typical betrayed husband. Was I still struggling? Did I still see images of Angie with someone else in my mind? Of course. I was hurting inside. I was filled with anger and grief, but I found some dark comfort in knowing that I was confusing her at the same time. I wasn't going to be predictable. What did I hope would happen? I wasn't entirely sure. But one thing was clear. How Angie reacted in the next few days would decide if we stayed together or if I would end our marriage. I went out for a quiet dinner alone. I thought the more time I gave Angie to think, the better. At first, she might want to confront me and blame me for what had happened. I wanted her to consider her actions. At best, I hoped she would truly understand how painful it was to be betrayed. It might be too much to ask, but I wanted her to think about how it felt to hurt someone else. I wanted her to feel as sad and lost as I did, but I didn't know if that was realistic. She had been unfaithful to me. Maybe she was already ready to leave. Did she even still care about me? Or were we just days away from a surprising goodbye? Even if she loved me, my discoveries might not hurt her as much as I hoped. How could she understand the hurt I felt if she was doing the same thing? It seemed like, what goes around comes around, or maybe, no real damage done. But that certainly wasn't how I felt. I decided to wait a week before speaking to Angie. In that time, I would let her think and listen to what I had recorded to find out what she was up to. I called my office and left a message saying I had to go out of town suddenly to take care of my sick mother. I said I would use my vacation and personal days. Then, I changed my phone message to, "Hi, this is Alex. I'm away for a few days. Please leave a message and I will call you back later." I checked into a local Holiday Inn, parked my car in the back, and walked to a rental place. I rented a plain, ordinary car. With that, I could drive around the area without being noticed, even in my own neighborhood. You may have had restless nights, but none like mine, thinking about Angie and some unknown man together over and over. It wasn't the happiness she was having that hurt me most. I wouldn't mind if she enjoyed a nice massage, for example. It was the closeness, the way people in love share themselves. The smiles and touches, the little actions we had between us, all those things I loved about Angie, those things that should have been just for me. I couldn't imagine being close to her again. How could I look at those familiar things without thinking of her with another guy? Would she always be comparing me to him? Would she be let down by me? Since I didn't know about the affair, I also didn't understand her reasons. Maybe our life felt boring or stuck, and I hadn't noticed, but I was so happy with her, and I thought she was happy too. I never figured it out that night, but I also couldn't sleep. After breakfast at the motel, I drove to my house and parked a couple of doors away. I waited until Angie left for work. 15 minutes later, I was inside, sitting in the kitchen with the recorders. There was just one phone call, about an hour after I had left. Angie called her best friend Connie, sounding very upset, and asked her to come over. Connie lived nearby. Her husband, Brad, was a casual friend of mine, but Angie and Connie were very close. When Connie arrived, Angie was in tears, and Connie asked, "Oh my God, Angie, what's wrong? Something terrible! You won't believe it!" Connie quickly said, "Oh no, did Alex find out about you and Tommy? That made me angry. Connie knows all about the affair." "No, Connie, it's even worse. Alex has been having an affair with Christina Blodgett for 3 months. He came home and told me everything tonight. He was crying, Connie. He looked completely broken. He said it was over and that he was really sorry, but he had to be honest with me. I had never seen him so upset." There was a pause for a moment. Then Connie said, "Angie, you need to take a deep breath. Let's think about this for a minute. Honestly, I don't see why this is so terrible. You have the upper hand now. If he ever hears about you and Tommy, you can say it was to get back at him. It's like a free pass." Hearing that made me groan inside. "Thanks for the help, Connie," I thought. Angie said, "No, Connie, you don't understand. I feel totally crushed. It doesn't make sense, I know. I was doing it too. But just imagining Alex with her, it feels like a knife in my stomach. You remember what she looks like, right? That shiny red hair and how she always gets attention from every man in the room. All the time I thought Alex loved me and only me. He was with that woman. I can't believe I was so blind." Connie kept trying to soothe Angie, but nothing worked. Angie was caught up in the same awful feelings I had felt. "Connie, I just don't know what to do. The past 2 hours have driven me almost crazy. You know as well as I do that Tommy was just a fling, a little bit of fun. It didn't mean anything more than the thrill of doing something sneaky, like you and Henry last year. This was new to me. I didn't know Connie had also had an affair." Angie continued, "And I never thought about how my fling would hurt Alex. I just thought I could be careful, and he would never find out, just like Brad never found out about you and Henry. You had your fun, it's over, and your marriage is still okay. But now—" She stopped, and I could hear her crying. "Now I feel so broken. How can I ever trust him again? All the special things between us, how he holds me and talks to me. You know what I mean. I could really lose it." "Listen, Angie," Connie said gently. "It's not the end. You said it yourself. Tommy was just a fling and you still love Alex. Henry was just a fling for me and I still love Brad. If it's the same for Alex, why can't you both move past this?" Angie's voice was empty. "Because now I see how it feels, Connie. Every time he was with her, it felt like he was laughing at me. The excitement he found with someone else behind my back. He may love me, but how could he not be smiling to himself? My poor wife, here's a little fun and she'll never know. Plus, thinking about Christina, laughing at what she was pulling over on me. It hurts so much. My predictable husband. You know how we joke about him being so regular, like you could set your watch by him? When he wakes up, leaves for work, and even what he eats for breakfast? I guess I was wrong about everything. I feel so hurt, Connie. It's like he used me and then tossed me away. Let me make us some coffee, Angie." For a while there was silence, just the sounds of cups clinking and water running. Occasionally I could hear Angie quietly crying. While they sipped their coffee, Connie tried to calm Angie, but it didn't help much. When Connie left, she made sure Angie promised not to act out. "Whatever you do, don't tell Alex about Tommy. Right now he feels awful about what he did, and that's how you want it. That's the only way you can handle this situation." Angie sighed. "I don't know, Connie. He was honest with me. And I don't know if I can keep lying to him. The only thing I'm sure of is that Tommy and I are over, at least for now, until I figure out if I want to stay married or if I even want to be married." I waited almost a whole week before I called Angie. It felt like a long, strange time in my life. I didn't reach out to friends because I didn't want sympathy or advice. I took many walks in the woods alone, thinking or aimlessly wandering. I tried reading a few books, but they didn't hold my interest. I went to see a new action movie at the theater, but left after just half an hour. I thought about the future as best as I could. The one decision I made was that if Angie and I broke up, I would move away. I needed a fresh start, far from all the memories of better times. I talked to a divorce lawyer my friend recommended. It turns out that getting a no-fault divorce when there are no kids is pretty simple. You can finish everything in just a few months, as long as the property division isn't contested. I asked him to get things started and file the papers, but not to tell Angie yet. I kept the papers with me because I thought I might want to give them to her personally, depending on how things went. The life I shared with Angie made me happier than ever. She was caring, fun, and brought joy into my life. She made me laugh, and I could make her laugh too. We were close and comfortable with each other. I felt like I could be myself with her almost from our first date. I believed she liked the real me. I didn't have to pretend or show off. She teased me for being so routine, but she also respected my serious side and sense of duty. Most importantly, I always trusted her. I saw her as honest and faithful. So what happens now? Clearly, honest and faithful didn't mean much anymore. I knew that I still loved her, but I couldn't picture a life where I couldn't trust her. What hit me the hardest was the sense of shame. Cheating, as I told her, feels like an attack, even if it was not meant that way. It feels wrong to hide things from your partner and to make them look foolish. That feeling of having a secret can poison the whole relationship. I couldn't shake the thought that Angie might see me in a lesser way, knowing she was with someone else behind my back. Besides her love for me, there might be a bit of pity or even disdain. How could I ever forgive her for that? Every day when Angie was gone, I went back to the house to listen to the recordings. The day after her chat with Connie, I heard Angie tell Tommy she was ending their affair. I didn't gather much about him from their brief talk. He was clearly younger, and it seemed like there wasn't much between them other than attraction. When she said she was having problems in our marriage and couldn't see him anymore, he didn't sound heartbroken, just let down. He didn't plead or lose his temper. His response was more like, "Okay, I get it. No hard feelings." I also learned that they had been together for about 3 weeks, mostly at his place, but a couple of times at mine. I never found out how they met. The easygoing nature of their relationship both helped and upset me. I was glad Angie didn't love him and that he wasn't going to take her away from me. Their tone on the phone was almost like he was just her coach or trainer. This made me feel a little less like I was totally replaced. But how could she have been so casual about being with him? Was it just because he looked good and was there? Did our promises to each other mean so little? What was Angie's love for me worth if it didn't stop her from being with him for fun? I couldn't find an answer to that. Besides a few regular phone calls, the only other talks I heard were Angie's long conversations with Connie, some over the phone and others in person. In every one, Connie's advice was clear. Don't tell Alex about your affair. Keep control and make him feel guilty. Angie was unhappy. She felt jealous, angry, and guilty. She was suffering, just as I hoped she would, tortured by ideas of me with Christina, unsure of how much I cared for her, and broken by her lost trust in me. She was very mad at me, to the point where she sometimes said she didn't care if she never saw me again. Yet she also had to face her own actions. She tried to help Connie understand that what they both did was hurtful and selfish, but Connie didn't want to see it that way. I had placed my trust in Angie, just like she had trusted me, and now she had broken that trust. Even though I didn't know about her secret, or so she thought, it didn't make it right. She even said out loud that cheating on me made her think less of me, even though it wasn't my fault. After about a week, Angie still hadn't decided what to do. Connie told her not to tell me the truth, but to come at me instead, but Angie wasn't sure about that idea. I was a little surprised that Angie hadn't tried to call me at all. I knew I wouldn't have answered if she had, but I still would have noticed the call. I figured she thought that since she was in the wrong, I should be the one to reach out to her first. A week after my confession, I got home around 4 o'clock and decided to make a nice dinner for myself and Angie while waiting for her to come back from work. I picked a day when I knew Connie wouldn't be around because she was out with her husband. I wanted to have this hard talk without any distractions. Angie came in around 5:45 looking nervous. She noticed an unfamiliar car outside and didn't know who was in the house. She gasped when she saw me in the dining room. The table was neatly set with a tablecloth, candles, and our best dishes. I was wearing an apron, stirring at the stove. She could smell the sauce I had made for the veal and the potatoes roasting in the oven. "Hi, Angie," I said, trying to seem eager, though I was scared. "I thought if I made us dinner, maybe we could talk tonight?" "Alex, you scared me. Where's your car?" "Oh, it's in the shop for a few days, and I rented a car. Sorry about that." "Why didn't you call me sooner? I've been just confused, angry, worried." "Well, Angie, I was scared too. I wanted to give you some time. I feared you would just scream at me and push me away forever. I'm still afraid of that," I said, looking at her. "I might," she replied. "I don't know what to do, Alex. This week has been so hard for me. I've been crying and thinking a lot. How could you betray our marriage? How could you break my trust?" This wasn't going as I had hoped. Maybe following Connie's advice, Angie was being harsh and not honest. "Angie," I said, "I was wrong. Cheating on you was the worst mistake I've ever made, and I will regret it forever. I'm here tonight hoping we can talk this through and see if there's any hope for our marriage. You might think I don't understand what you've been feeling this week, but I really do." She began to answer, looking upset. "Alex, how could you possibly know what I've been going through?" She suddenly sounded different. "I'm sorry," she said more softly, almost tired. "This dinner looks nice. Let's eat first and then we can talk about things." As we had dinner, we both started to relax a little. We talked about simple topics like her job, our families, and how her brother's new business was going. I mentioned that I took some days off to figure things out. She asked where I had been staying, and I told her about the Holiday Inn. "It's been pretty lonely there," I said with a sad smile. "Yes, it's been hard here too," she said with a thoughtful look. I waited, hoping Angie would tell me the truth about her situation, or that she would keep feeling bad, thinking I had done something wrong too. When she stayed quiet, I encouraged her. "What do you want to do? Do you have questions for me? Do you want to tell me something?" I would never know what she might have said because suddenly the kitchen door opened, and we heard Connie's voice calling, "Angie, are you here?" She walked into the dining room, saw us together, and immediately jumped in. "Alex, what are you doing here? You really shouldn't come back. Do you know how much Angie has been hurting?" I tried to hide my annoyance. Wasn't she supposed to be out with Brad tonight? Angie seemed to think the same. "Connie, I thought you and Brad were going to dinner." "Oh, he's working late, so we had to cancel." "Angie, are you letting Alex charm his way back in?" I saw a chance to use Connie's surprise visit to my advantage. I could let her say everything a protective friend might say, hoping Angie wouldn't say it herself. "Connie," I said softly, "I know you care about Angie, but I'm not sure this is your concern." "Oh, really?" she huffed. "Do you know who has been there for your wife, listening to her and supporting her? Do you understand what she has faced this past week?" "Yes, Connie, I do," I replied, while Angie said, "Connie, please calm down." "No, I won't calm down," Connie insisted. "Alex, hurting Angie and making things worse for her is terrible. How could you be so cruel?" I remained calm. "Are you saying it would be better if I had an affair and never told Angie? Would that make it okay?" This made her pause. She looked less certain and a bit embarrassed. I also noticed Angie blush and look away for a moment. Taking a breath, Connie said, "No, Alex, that's not what I mean." "Okay, Connie, help me understand. Is it wrong for someone married to cheat behind their partner's back? Or is it okay as long as the partner never finds out? Or are you saying telling the truth about cheating makes things worse? Can you help me understand this?" I watched Angie while Connie and I argued. Angie looked focused, happy to let Connie do the talking. That was fine with me for now. Connie stayed strong despite the situation. "It's simple, Alex. You were unfaithful to Angie. That was wrong, really wrong. Even if you hadn't told her, it would have broken her trust. But I can't help but wonder if your telling the truth was really just to clear your own mind. It didn't help Angie feel better." "Connie," I said, "are you saying that cheating isn't so bad if it's kept a secret, but that being honest makes it worse? Is that what you think, Angie?" My wife looked upset. I don't know what to think. Ever since you told me about you and Christina, I felt lost. It's awful what you've put me through. Okay, let me ask you clearly. Should I have kept my connection with Christina a secret from you, just ended it and left you in the dark forever? Before she could answer, Connie jumped in. The answer is no, Alex. You would have carried a hidden secret, and you would always have looked down on Angie, knowing you had this exciting thing while she didn't see it. Don't you see how that diminishes her? I stayed quiet, pleased with her answer, and the room fell silent for a moment. Then I said, "All right, Connie, I see your point. But it's time for you to let Angie and me talk alone. We need to sort through a lot together, just the two of us." Connie glanced at Angie, who nodded. "Yes, Connie. Thank you for being a good friend. But Alex and I need some time to ourselves." Connie hesitated, but said her goodbyes and left. When I turned back to Angie, she looked more anxious than ever. I offered to clean the dishes, and she came in to make coffee while I tidied up. I poured 2 cups and brought them back to the table. "Angie, what should we do now? What do you want from me? Is there any hope for us?" "Honestly, Alex, I have no idea. It's even more complicated than you think. I never expected anything you told me could make me so sad and confused." "Was I wrong to tell you about my connection with Christina, Angie? Should I have kept it hidden?" "No!" she cried, suddenly bursting into tears. "No, hiding it would have been even worse. Oh my God, I think I'm losing my mind." I leaned over and took her hand, holding it gently as she cried for a few minutes. Finally, she calmed down enough to say, "Alex, maybe you should go. I know we haven't really talked this through, but I just don't feel ready to do that yet. Can we meet up in a few days?" I could tell she was struggling with whether to tell me the truth, and it was really important to me that she did. "Sure, Angie. How about I cook dinner here again on Friday?" "No, Alex, I want to cook this time. It will make me feel, I don't know, more in control." We said our goodbyes quickly. I gave her a light kiss on the cheek, hesitating as if unsure if I should, and then I left. That evening, Angie acted nothing like a guilty person. There was no shouting, no angry outbursts. I knew why she wasn't acting that way. She wasn't exactly innocent. But I couldn't help but wonder if she realized it was strange that she wasn't upset about what I had done. In the next couple of days, Angie and her friend Connie kept talking. Connie kept telling Angie not to admit to her own secret, and Angie felt confused and lost. It was clear that my words from my fight with Connie were on Angie's mind, but neither she nor I knew what she would decide. By Friday, I felt I had waited long enough. This evening, the truth would come out. I hoped for honesty from Angie, but if I didn't get it, I would make sure she heard it from me. I realized I had almost started to feel pity for her. I knew her pain all too well. But my hurt came from her real secret. Hers was just some temporary sadness that, in my mind, was the least she deserved. When I walked into the house that evening, it felt like our roles had switched. I was no longer the guilty husband. I walked in feeling relaxed. Angie was supposed to be the upset victim, but she seemed tense and worried. "Hi, Angie," I said, kissing her on the cheek again. "You look wonderful and dinner smells delicious. Can I help with anything?" "No thanks, Alex. Maybe pour the wine from the refrigerator. I'll get the plates ready." Like before, we agreed without saying it to avoid discussing the main issue at dinner. Instead, we ate, talked about light things, and enjoyed Angie's cooking. Once we finished our coffee, I decided it was time to get to the point. My marriage could change after this talk, but I was done waiting. "We can't keep avoiding this, Angie. You need to tell me honestly how you feel and what you think our future looks like." No guilty husband would normally speak so directly, but Angie didn't seem to notice. Instead, she just looked at me, shaken, with tears in her eyes. "Alex, I still don't know what to say. Every time I think of you with Christina, I start to cry. I feel a deep sadness inside me, like a big, empty space in my heart. I don't know how it can ever get better or how I can trust you again." I stayed quiet, hoping for a but. "But I haven't been honest with you either. I made a mistake too. I was unfaithful." Her words came out slowly as she started to cry. After a moment, she looked at me, still in tears, probably thinking I would be shocked or angry. Instead, I just sat there quietly, watching her. "Can you tell me about it, Angie?" She avoided my gaze and said, "It was Just a guy I met in that tennis class. After class, a group of us would have drinks and he always flirted with me. Then one night we were the last two at the bar and... She stopped, crying softly with her face in her hands. Then she looked up. Wait a minute, Alex. I'm admitting my mistake, and you haven't told me anything about you and that... Christina, don't I deserve to know the truth too? Well, Angie, did you notice you never asked me about it? But yes, you deserve the full truth from me as well. I have two things to tell you. First, I already knew about your mistake. I came home a little early last week and heard you and him in our bed. In our bed, Angie. Second, I never had an affair with Christina Blodgett. She and her husband moved away last January. I made that up, Angie. I never cheated on you at all. Angie stared at me, shocked and confused. Wait a minute. You lied to me, Alex? Then it hit her, and the color drained from her face. She looked at me, her confusion turning into shame. You heard us? She whispered. Yes, I said, feeling the anger build inside me. Yes, Angie, I heard you with another man in our bed. So I left. Then I came back an hour later and told you a wild story about Christina Blodgett. I wanted you to feel some of the pain that I was feeling. I could see she was trying to understand everything I said. She looked lost, which made sense. I waited a couple of minutes before I spoke again. Angie, we need to talk a lot more. Please call me when you're ready and I'll come back to the house. But it better be soon, and you need to be completely honest with me. Otherwise, this marriage is over. I stood up and, without looking back, walked out to my car and drove away. I hadn't forgotten the divorce papers in my pocket. I just chose not to take them out. I was very angry, but I wasn't ready to make that decision yet. Angie's confession didn't make everything okay because nothing could fix this. But she had been truthful about something really hard. Maybe loving me meant more to her than just being the one in control as the so-called innocent party. I went to the Holiday Inn bar and had 2 beers. Then I went to my room and fell asleep with a game playing on the TV. I felt tired, sad, angry, and a bit hopeful, all mixed together. My cell phone woke me at 8:15. This early on a Saturday, it had to be Angie, and it was, "Hello?" I said sleepily. "Oh, Alex, I'm sorry if I woke you." Her voice was shaky and scared. "It's okay, Angie." I paused, not sure what else to say. "Alex, I know I need to... Oh my God, how are you ever going to forgive me?" She broke off and started to cry. After a moment, she calmed down a bit and said, "Can we talk today? I'm losing my mind. I'm so scared I'm going to lose you, and I can't think." "What are you doing today, Angie? Maybe we can meet later. Do you want to go out for lunch?" She seemed to relax a little. "Lunch sounds great, but please not in public." "Okay," I said. "I can pick up some sandwiches and bring them to you." "What's your morning like?" Angie replied, "I have to run some errands and go to the grocery store, but I can be back by 12:30. Is that okay?" "Yes, that's fine." "Alex?" "Yes, Angie?" "I love you," she whispered. Then before I could answer, she hung up. I quickly showered, had some breakfast, and then went to a deli to grab lunch items. I got to her house by 11, giving me time to listen to the recordings of what happened the night before after I left. At first, I just heard Angie crying. Eventually, she calmed down and started cleaning up the dinner dishes. Then she called information and asked for the Blodgetts, but was told that number was no longer in use. A few minutes later, she called a woman named Rosemarie Burke, who knew the Blodgetts. Angie casually asked if she had seen them lately, and Rosemarie said, "Oh no, Arthur got a job in British Columbia at the start of the year, and they moved there." After a few more moments of chatting, Angie hung up and immediately called Connie, asking her to come over. Connie barely made it in the door before Angie was crying again. "Connie, I think I've lost him. I feel like Alex is going to leave me." "Angie, what are you saying? He's the one at fault, not you. At least that's what he thinks." "No, listen." Angie told Connie what I'd said to her at dinner. There was a long pause. Finally, Connie said, "Wow," in a low, almost impressed voice. "That's hard to believe, Angie. What a strange thing for him to do. But how do you know it's true? Maybe he was just saying that to make you feel bad." "No, Connie, I called Rosemarie Burke. She said the Blodgetts moved away in January. I've thought about this a lot. Alex had to be truthful tonight. There was no affair. But what matters is that he heard me and Tommy in our bed." She stopped speaking and started to cry. I could hear Connie get up, probably to give Angie a hug. Their talk went on for more than an hour. All of Connie's confidence was gone. She understood how I must feel. They even talked about my fight with Connie from 2 nights ago, realizing how bad Connie's earlier strong words about unfaithfulness sounded now. In the end, the most comfort Connie could give Angie was, "He must still want to be with you, Angie. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done this. He would have come home and left you." "I know," Angie said, wiping her tears. "I keep telling myself that. But after everything you and I said about cheating, how terrible it is. He just sat there and watched us talk." "Angie, what we said that night doesn't matter now. What matters is whether Alex still wants to be married to you. If he loves you enough to give you another chance. You'll need to talk to him about it." "Good job, Connie." This was the first helpful thing she had said to Angie since this all began. I had finished with the tapes before Angie came back, and I sat in the living room thinking. When I heard her car, I went to open the door for her. Angie walked in with some grocery bags, looking as shy and scared as I'd ever seen her. Without saying anything, I went to the car and brought in the rest of the bags, and we worked together to put everything away. While we were sitting at the kitchen table with our sandwiches, Angie whispered, "Alex, I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. I feel so ashamed." "Angie," I replied, "how did it feel these last 10 days thinking that I had been unfaithful with Christina?" She looked at me and said, "It felt awful, horrible. I was more hurt and angry than I have ever been. It made me question everything. Whether you really love me, whether I am good enough for you, whether I'm enough for you. You know, in other ways." I kept picturing you with her, imagining you two being so close that it was more than we've ever shared. I imagined you enjoying everything about her. I felt like the foolish wife who didn't see what was happening behind her back. Well, Angie, I have felt the same way. Except, as you know, I didn't actually cheat on you. You did that to me. You can move on from those feelings. But I have to deal with mine." I hadn't meant to raise my voice. "And just so you know, you knew about my supposed affair because I told you while saying sorry and explaining how much I love you. I found out about your secret because you were seeing someone else in our home, in our bed, while I was coming back from work. Did I miss something in our marriage vows? Did the person who married us say that forsaking all others was optional? Or did you just decide that being faithful didn't matter?" I realized that I was shouting, and Angie looked upset and was crying. I stopped suddenly, got up from my chair, and walked around the kitchen to calm down my rising anger. I walked back and forth for a few moments without either of us saying anything. Then I started again, but this time I kept my voice low. "It was such a thoughtless and selfish thing to do, Angie. Do you know how much I have loved you? Being with you has made me so happy. I wanted to spend my whole life with you. If there was something missing in your life, you could have talked to me. If I wasn't enough for you as a husband, don't you think I would have tried to give you what you needed?" "Stop, Alex!" Angie shouted, jumping out of her chair. "I deserve everything you've said, but not that. You do satisfy me. I've never been happier than I am with you. You are the best husband I could ever wish for, and I love being close to you. This didn't happen because of anything you did. It happened because I was careless and selfish, just like you said. I was like a kid who has money but steals candy just for the thrill of it. You think you won't get caught and it'll just be a little excitement." I interrupted. "Do you think that Connie's affair with Henry had anything to do with this?" She looked at me, surprised. "You know about that?" I just nodded. After a moment, she answered, "Yes, I think it did. Connie talked to me about how exciting it was being with her lover, and then she ended it, and Brad never knew, and their marriage is better than ever. She told me, blushing a little, that it really helped their relationship. So you thought you might want to try that for yourself?" I asked, more calmly now. She looked down. "Yes, I guess so. I mean, I had never thought about an affair before, just the occasional daydream, like about some movie star. But what Connie did made it seem possible." I went back and sat down, waiting, and finally Angie told me the story she started to share the night before. Tommy was in her tennis class, and they'd gone out for drinks with the group every week. One night it was just the two of them, and he made a move on her. I didn't give in then. But I didn't completely shut him out either, Alex. It must have been because I was thinking about Connie. I was so foolish. I thought I could do it like she did, and you'd never find out. What was it like with him? I stayed quiet, but I wanted her to tell me. Was, Alex, not is. It's over with Tommy. I called him and ended it the day you found out. Okay, I insisted. So what was it like with him? She looked away. We were together 6 times. It was exciting because he was someone new after 8 years, and I knew it was wrong. He's only 24, and he was really eager. He's not gentle like you are, Alex, and he doesn't love me. I didn't feel safe and loved like I do with you. It was quick, energetic, and a bit awkward. I'm trying so hard to be honest now, even though it's too late. She gave a sad smile. Being with him was thrilling, but I wouldn't want all of that all the time. I also got your kindness and caring, too. I couldn't help but say, plus the thrill of keeping it from me, right? That feeling of guess what I'm doing and you don't know. Do you remember what Connie said the other night when you thought I had been unfaithful? You would always have felt a bit of scorn for her, knowing you had something exciting going on behind her back and she was too blind to see. Isn't that true? Were there no feelings of being better, my dear wife? She looked down, quiet, so I kept pressing. Tell me, what was more fun, thinking about Tommy while you were with me, or thinking about me while you were with Tommy? I wasn't shouting, but my voice was loud and cold. I could tell my angry face scared her. Angie stood as far away from me as possible in the kitchen. Seeing her scared face made my anger fade. I felt exhausted and very sad. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. The only sound in the room was our breathing, slowly calming down. Angie, if nothing else good has happened in the past 10 days, at least my lie about Christina Blodgett has made you see how it feels when the person you love hurts you. I don't know what to do now. I love you very much, but I'm so hurt and confused. I can't trust you again, or how I can ever be close to you again. Think about what you would do if I were the one who was unfaithful. Once you've thought it through, let me know and we can talk again. I don't think we can get any further today. I turned to leave. I heard her call, Alex, please wait. But when I looked back, she just sighed. No, it's okay. I'll do what you asked. But Alex, do you want to come home? Well, you could tell me to go if you want. That feels like the right thing to do. No, Angie. I don't want to stay here anymore. I don't want to be in our bed or even the guest room knowing what happened. For now, I'll stay at the Holiday Inn. If I need to, I might find an apartment. I heard her start to cry softly as I walked out. I drove back to the Holiday Inn, my mind racing with mixed feelings. I knew I loved Angie, and I knew she felt sorry, but I also felt really angry at her. I wanted our marriage to last, but I couldn't see myself trusting her again. I quickly packed my bags, checked out, and drove to the airport. In less than an hour, I had my ticket and was ready to fly to Florida. I planned to spend a few days at Sanibel Island in a resort my friends had told me about years ago. While I waited for my flight, I called my boss. Our talk was a bit tense. He was not happy when I told him I needed 2 more weeks off for personal reasons. He even hinted at firing me. John, I said calmly, my marriage is in trouble, and I need this time to see if it can work out. For almost 10 years, I've been your best employee and have helped the company out of tough situations. Ross and Ed in my division can handle everything while I'm gone. I also know, and you know too, that if you fire me, I could find another good job in 2 weeks. It'll take you longer than that to find someone as good as me to take my place. There was a long pause. I was being honest, and John knew it. Finally, he said heavily, Okay, Alex. I don't like this, but I guess I understand. Just come back as soon as you can. Smiling to myself, I replied, If I don't need the full 2 weeks, I'll be back sooner, I promise. By 8 p.m., I was settled into a nice suite that looked over the pool at the resort. I decided not to worry about money for now. I'd been careful with my spending for years, saving for a future we might not even have. Now that my marriage was uncertain, I didn't want to stress over every penny. The pool was beautiful and inviting, so I put on my swimsuit and went for a swim. I did 40 laps. I had been a swimmer in college, and although I wasn't in the same shape anymore, I still loved the feeling of gliding through the water. I decided to swim every day while I was here. Even if nothing else went well, I would leave feeling much healthier. The next day was a day of relaxation, and I tried not to think too much about Angie. I woke up late and had breakfast by the pool. After that, I went for a long walk, enjoyed lunch, and took a little nap. Later in the afternoon, I drove around to soak up the warm sun. When I returned, I swam laps in the pool since it was less busy then. I had dinner at the hotel's restaurant outside on the porch, and afterward I relaxed at the bar for a while, sipping a beer and watching a baseball game on the TV. Not long after, I noticed someone sitting nearby. A lovely brunette woman in her late 20s took a seat 2 stools away. She ordered a drink and started chatting with me. Our conversation kicked off with the game, but quickly shifted to talking about the resort and how nice it was. I was a bit confused by her interest in me. I consider myself good-looking, but I wasn't used to charming women approaching me like this. I wondered if she might be looking for something else. After a while, I suggested we move to a quieter table, and she agreed happily. We talked more, and she asked about my job and where I lived. She noticed my wedding ring, and I admitted that I was there without my wife and that we were having some problems. When I asked her about her job, she smiled and said, "I work in personal services." That cleared things up. I then asked, "Could I be someone who might use your services?" "Definitely," she said with a smile. "Just let me know." I had never thought about that before, but in that moment, I found myself curious. Nicole was beautiful, and I was feeling quite attracted to her. I hadn't been with anyone in over 2 weeks, and I wasn't feeling very loyal to my wife at that moment. A few minutes later, we were in my suite. We talked briefly, and she mentioned that she wanted $150 for the evening. I asked how much it would be for her company until I went to sleep, and she said $300. I went to the safe in the closet, took out $400, and handed it to her. When she looked surprised, I said, "You're a wonderful and charming person. I'm sure I will want to give you a little extra before you leave, so why not take care of it now?" Nicole stepped closer and kissed me gently. "You're a real gentleman, Alex. I think we're going to have a great time." We both seemed to enjoy it. I won't assume how much of it was genuine for Nicole, but she certainly looked happy. I changed my clothes first and asked if I could help her with hers, which was nice. Under her dress, she wore just a black thong and some high stockings. I knelt down and gently pushed her clothes aside, taking a moment to admire her smooth, long legs and look up at her lovely form. Once we were lying on the bed next to each other, Nicole took charge. She kissed and gently touched my body, taking her time and not rushing. I did the same, enjoying the warmth of her skin and feeling grateful to be with someone new after being with Angie for so long. Was this what it felt like for her with Tommy? The excitement of meeting someone different? We enjoyed each other's company for about 20 minutes before she slowly moved down and kissed my lower body, making me feel very excited. I didn't want to finish so quickly, so I gently pulled her back up to sit on me. With a bright smile, she reached for the night table to grab the protection she had taken from her bag. She quickly unrolled it and settled on top of me, smiling as she did. It felt incredible to be close to her, enjoying a connection with someone besides Angie after all these years. Nicole moved gently and confidently, as if she knew just how to make the moment special. There was a sense of assurance in her movements, and she was determined to make it thrilling for us both. Sometimes she bounced enthusiastically, making my heart race and building the excitement inside me. Then she would slow down, moving in a way that made me realize how much she enjoyed it too. I touched her sides and gently held her beautiful form. She seemed to be enjoying herself too, judging by her happy sounds and the look on her face. As we moved together, I felt a wave of excitement build up inside me. Despite the rush, I tried to hold back, but soon I couldn't resist anymore. I held her hips firmly and matched her movement, feeling the connection deepen each time we came together. Finally, I couldn't wait any longer and felt a rush of joy. It was an amazing moment that we shared. Afterward, she cuddled next to me like a special friend as we caught our breath. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "That was one of the most exciting experiences I've had. You're wonderful." She smiled back, clearly happy with my praise. "You were great too, Alex. If you and your wife are having problems, it's certainly not because of you." Then, seeing the change in my expression, she said, "I'm really sorry, Alex. That wasn't kind of me. I apologize." I smiled back, understanding her genuine concern. It's okay, Nicole. I think about Angie often. I could never forget her. Being here with you is a really nice way to take my mind off things. After resting for a while, Nicole and I grew closer again. I started by gently touching and massaging her while she relaxed. Then I asked her to get on her hands and knees so I could be underneath her. She seemed to enjoy that a lot, and soon she was moving around, making it a fun challenge for me to keep up. After a while, we changed positions again. I had always liked this way of being close to someone. I could reach and hold her while we moved together, and it felt really exciting with Nicole. Eventually, she left around 1:30 a.m., and we thanked each other warmly for a wonderful evening. The next day, I walked a lot and thought about everything. I had come to Florida on a whim. I had shared a special moment with Nicole just because I felt like it. Now, I wanted to get Angie down here too. Sure, I was still really upset with Angie, but I also loved her and missed being with her. Suddenly, I felt ready to talk to her to see if we could work on our marriage. I had enough time alone now. I drove into town, found a travel agent, and bought a plane ticket for Angie. Then I sent it to her and went back to the hotel to call. "Hi, Angie, it's Alex. How are you?" "I'm so glad you called, honey. I wanted to call you too, but I've been nervous. Would you like to meet and talk? Listen, I'm in Florida. I took some time off from work. I sent you a ticket because I want you to come and spend a week with me." "Alex, wow, that sounds amazing, but I'm not sure I can just leave work like that." "Angie, I've been thinking a lot, and I know you have too. We need to figure out if we can save our marriage. That's way more important than our jobs. I even told John he could fire me if he needed to, but I was going to Florida. If you get fired, you can find another job. We both know you are the best paralegal at your firm, but finding a new husband isn't as easy." There was a pause. Angie then said slowly, "This isn't like you, Alex. What happened to the careful, steady man I've been with all these years?" "I'm not sure that's me anymore, Angie. Now I'm someone who decides what I want and goes for it. It's really important to me that you come here. I have a nice room for us, and I sent you a ticket for tomorrow afternoon. If our marriage means as much to you as it does to me, you will come." There was silence again. Then, hesitantly, she said, "Okay, honey. This makes me nervous, but I'll be there." "Great. I'll meet you at the airport when you arrive. Bye, Angie." I didn't have a clear plan. The old serious Alex, who was always so predictable, would have thought everything through. Now I was just following my feelings. I kept moving forward, gently touching her as I let my fingers explore, feeling her excitement build. Angie was breathing heavily and starting to move her hips. I continued to caress her softly, mixing light and firm touches until I noticed she was getting close. Then I quickened my pace, and she let out a joyful sound as she reached that moment of pleasure. I was too eager to hold back. Once she caught her breath, I rolled over her, feeling a strong connection between us. I was consumed with wanting to be completely with her, to put all thoughts of Tommy away and make her feel filled with happiness. Instead of rushing, I focused on her enjoyment. Angie loved a steady, slow rhythm that built up gradually, and I made sure to give her that. I shifted my movements a little, sometimes pressing against her in a special way, and I kissed her neck and listened to her as we moved together. After her first wave of happiness, she relaxed completely and began to move with me. I continued for 10 minutes or more, then I picked up the speed, feeling my own excitement grow. I sensed she was satisfied and wouldn't reach that high again, so I concentrated on my own pleasure. The last moments were intense. I became aware only of the joy of our connection, and I reached my peak with a sound that was somewhere between a groan and a shout. When I came back to reality, Angie held me close, smiling at me. "Alex, thank you for being with me like that. To be honest, I wondered, how does that compare to Tommy? But I kept that thought to myself and smiled back." We cuddled up and soon fell asleep. The next morning, we had breakfast outside and then wandered around the resort. I was looking for a quiet spot for us to talk, and I found a bench in the shade. As we approached the bench, I noticed Angie seemed tense again. She knew we had some tough conversations ahead, and I could see she wasn't looking forward to it. "Angie, I'm glad we're here, and I'm happy about last night. It felt like a good start for us. But we need to discuss some things, and I think it might be hard for a while. I don't even know if we can move past this." Angie nodded, looking serious and troubled. "One thing we should do," I continued, "is try to be as honest as possible with each other. We're both feeling hurt. I'm angry and confused, wondering if I can ever trust you again. And I'm sure you feel guilty and worried about our relationship." She nodded again and said, "I know we have to talk, Alex. I will do my best. Please, just give me a chance to make things right." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, "Angie, I was with someone else a couple of nights ago." She gasped, "Oh my God, Alex." I won't lie and say I didn't do it. I didn't plan for it to happen, but she approached me at a bar, and when she offered, I went along. And I won't pretend I feel guilty either. I'm still really hurt, Angie, thinking of you with Tommy. Hearing the things you two did that day, they just keep playing in my head. So I took the chance. I felt like I deserved a little joy, too. At this point, what's the point in holding back out of loyalty to you? It was just a physical encounter, with protection, and it felt exciting. She was beautiful and open, and I enjoyed every moment. I sat quietly watching Angie. She wasn't crying, but her face was pale and tight. Tears were close. I decided to wait for her to speak, no matter how long it took. Finally, she said, "I guess I understand, Alex. How could you not be hurt, and how could you not want to get back at me?" "No, Angie," I replied. "This wasn't about you. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't do it to hurt you. I think I just got tired of being the responsible one, the predictable one, the guy everyone relies on. I had a chance for something thrilling, and I took it." I paused for a moment, then continued. "That's not it. Let me start over. It's true that I wasn't with Nicole to hurt you, but it's also true that you were on my mind while I was with her. Just like I believe you didn't get involved with Tommy to hurt me, but it doesn't mean I wasn't in your thoughts when you were with him. It wasn't like you were just out having fun. You have to admit part of the thrill was doing it secretly." Angie looked at me, clearly troubled. "Alex," she said, her voice trembling a bit, "you've changed so much lately. I wonder how well I really know you. You've always held back before, but now it feels like there are no secrets when we talk. You seem harder, or maybe more distant." "Yes, that's probably right. But I think you've changed too, Angie." My voice had a bitter edge. The Angie I used to know wouldn't have been with another man in our home. She looked like I had slapped her. After a minute, she began to cry, hard, hiding her face in her hands. I could hear her saying, I'm sorry, between sobs. I moved closer to her and held her tight, letting her tears flow. Neither of us spoke for a long time. When Angie finished crying, she sat up and wiped her face with a tissue. Then she said, "Alex, before you left, you asked me to think about how I would feel if you were the one who had made a mistake. I have thought a lot about it, and I have some answers for you. I'd like to share them after lunch if that's okay." I nodded. She continued, "Would it be all right if you had lunch down here? I want to freshen up and eat alone in the room. I need some time to get my thoughts together." We agreed I would come back in an hour, and she walked away. When I returned, Angie was ready for me. She had showered and brushed her hair, looking less sad than before. She asked me to sit on the sofa while she took a seat in a big armchair with a notebook and pen in her hands. She wore her glasses from work, giving her a smart look that I really liked. "Alex, I've thought a lot about this. I believe you wanted me to consider how I'd feel if you had made a mistake, understand your feelings about what I did, and finally think about how I can make it better." So I wrote down 3 columns. The first is how I would feel, the second is how you must feel, and the third is what I can try to do. As she spoke, wearing her glasses and sharing her clear plan, my heart filled with love for her. I had been so angry and hurt that I forgot how much I loved Angie and why. Seeing her organized side reminded me of what made her special and why I wanted to work on our marriage. She continued, "I'm sorry to say that for some of these points, I don't know what to put in the 3rd column." Pain showed in her eyes. "I'll read an item from the 1st column, then from the 2nd, and if there's something in the 3rd column, I will share that too." "Okay, Angie," I smiled gently at her. "First, I would feel angry that you made a mistake. And I know you're angry, Alex, and I deserve it. Then I'd want to know how you could possibly explain doing something so hurtful. You deserve that explanation too. I think I tried to give it to you before you left, how Connie's mistake seemed exciting and harmless, and I foolishly thought I could do the same without hurting you." I added, "Well, Your friend Tommy's actions are probably part of the reason too, but we can talk about that later. Why don't you just keep going? Well, I would feel really insecure, Alex, worried that your other partner might be more attractive or fun than I am. So you must feel some of the same doubts. I snapped back, and what's your big idea to fix that, Angie? She looked at me with sadness in her eyes. Nothing will make the hurt go away, sweetheart. What I wrote is that I want to show Alex how much I love him and that he is the only one I will ever want from now on. But I know that I can't just make this fix itself, Alex. I don't know if it's better to never talk about what I did with Tommy or if I should share everything so we can move past it. Actually, I want to know everything, Angie, but we don't have to do that now. I noticed fear in her eyes, but she stayed quiet. After a moment, she returned to her list. Well, my pride was hurt thinking about Christina, and I'm sure yours is too. It's hard to find out that the person you thought was yours is with someone else. It just feels unforgivable, right, Alex? She suddenly began to cry again. Without saying a word, I went over to hold her for a few minutes, and she gradually calmed down. What else is on the list, Angie? Just 2 more things. The first is trust. How can you ever trust me again? How can I earn back your trust? I replied. I think I know the answer. It will take a lot of time, and we both have to work hard at it. For a while, I won't trust you at all, and you'll just have to deal with it. I'll want to know where you are all the time, who you're having lunch with, who calls you, and what you talk about with Connie. I paused, making a face. Oh yes, Connie. That's another talk we need to have. Angie nodded. The last thing, Alex, is reassurance. You used to feel sure that you had all my love and attention, that you were my first choice for a husband, best friend, and partner. When we were together, you could trust that I was only thinking of you, and I messed that up. Now I need to find ways to give it back to you. She looked at me with determination, her cheeks still wet. And I will, Alex. Just wait and see. I'll do it. Every day you let me be part of your life, I'll show you how much you mean to me and how sorry I am for hurting you. Suddenly she got up, walked over to me, and sat on my lap, hugging me tightly. She whispered near my ear, You are my best partner, my best friend. You are the only man I want, and I promise I'll show you that every single day. Without another word, she stood up and led me toward the bed. She had a determined look in her eyes as she carefully removed my shoes and socks, my shirt, and finally my shorts. Then, quickly taking off her own clothes, she knelt down between my legs. After a moment, still looking into my eyes, she moved closer and touched me gently. Using her hands, she caressed me, taking her time to build up the feeling between us. She focused hard, almost as if she were solving a difficult math problem. I found that amusing, but I was also really enjoying the moment. With her eyes locked on mine, she brought me closer to a sweet release. Finally, I asked, Angie, don't you want to join me? She shook her head and then began to increase her pace, making everything feel even better. I soon found myself moving with her rhythm, and after a short while, I felt myself reach a peak of pleasure. I let out a soft groan as I experienced a wave of happiness. She stayed close, even as I relaxed afterward, gently calming me down. Only when I felt completely at ease did she pull away, sliding up beside me on the bed with a proud smile. She saw my smile and said, Consider that a promise. I laughed, and soon she was laughing too as we lay there in each other's arms. Angie had never really enjoyed this before. She had done it sometimes to make me happy, but it wasn't her favorite, and she never felt comfortable with it. So, I knew that this promise was a special sign of her love for me. We spent the rest of the day in bed, only getting up for a nice room service dinner. I even skipped my swimming for the first time that week. Angie seemed more passionate than I had seen her in a long time, and I was more than happy to enjoy the moment with her. Sometimes we were tender with each other, and sometimes we were more playful. By around 10 p.m., we were both happy, tired, and fell fast asleep. The next day, after a nice breakfast in the sun, we had another serious talk. I shared my thoughts with Angie about returning home. I need to know about you and Tommy, I said. And here's why. Part of me wishes you could just take back what happened with him like it never existed. But that's not possible. So, what I've decided is that we should rewrite what happened, I said. She looked at me with a puzzled expression. I quickly added, Don't worry, I'll explain. But first, Can you tell me how this all began? Feeling sad but willing, she shared the story, some of which I already knew. The tennis class, the casual drinks afterwards with friends, and an evening when they were alone, and he made a move on her. I said no, Alex, but I didn't shut him out completely. He kept asking, not pushy, but he didn't give up. After the last tennis class, he offered to walk me to my car, and he kissed me. And I let him, Alex. It was a short kiss, but we both understood what it meant. The following week, he called and suggested we play tennis together to practice. He's a gym teacher at a middle school, so he's free after about 2:30 p.m. I agreed to take an afternoon off and meet him at his place, and then we'd go to some nearby courts. She looked at me, pain visible on her face. I have no excuses, Alex. He took the lead, but I knew what I was doing too. When I got to his apartment, he offered me a soda before tennis, and then he flirted with me. He complimented me and stood behind me, giving me a shoulder rub. It's just awful to talk about this. When he had me feeling nice and relaxed, he took my hand and led me into the bedroom. You can guess what happened next. Her voice sounded empty. Just one more question for now, Angie. Did you use protection? She nodded. Yes, always. The first time we hardly talked except when I told him he needed to use protection. He had some in a drawer by his bed. What else do you know about Tommy? Well, he's a gym teacher, as I said, and he's from Buffalo. He's also engaged, though that clearly doesn't mean he's loyal to his fiancée. She said that last part bitterly. After a moment, I said, Okay, Angie, here's what I mean by rewriting. I want you and me to recreate what you did with Tommy. I'm going to ask you to write down everything about each time you were together, what you did, where it happened, what it felt like, who took charge, and all the details. And then I want us to do those things together, in those same places and in the same ways. That way, every time you are with Tommy, it'll be rewritten by you and me together. I know this might sound crazy, but it's the best way I can think of to help us move on from what happened. Angie looked serious. Yes, Alex, it does sound a bit crazy, but it sort of makes sense to me too. If you give me some time today, I can write down everything you asked for. But can I ask one favor? I nodded, and she continued. Could you read it to me when we're together, with me in your arms after we've shared an intimate moment? Somehow I thought this would help me worry less about how you'd feel when you read it. I smiled and replied, Of course, Angie. Then she asked me another question. Alex, when you said all the same places, do you mean we'll be spending time in Tommy's apartment? How can we do that? I gave her a playful smile and said, Just leave that part to me. After lunch, we went our separate ways for a while. Angie stayed in the room to make her list, which I knew was not an easy task. I made a couple of phone calls and then swam some laps in the pool. In just a few days, I felt stronger and said to myself I would keep swimming when I got home. It felt great to be a little healthier. We had 3 more days at the resort before we had to return to work, and we wanted to enjoy every moment. I didn't mention the list for a bit, and instead we just had fun. We swam, lounged in the sun, went out to eat, and spent time talking and being close to each other. Angie was very eager to make things right between us. We took our time being together and often enjoyed relaxing massages that led to sweet moments of closeness. She asked me many times if there were new things I wanted to try. One of my favorites was when we stood close together against a wall. Once we found our balance, I lifted her up a bit, and we enjoyed each other in a different way. It took a moment to find a good rhythm, and it felt thrilling. We both caught our breath and then laughed together when we finished, still feeling happy and connected. We also had great conversations about our marriage. Before the troubles, we thought we were doing well, but we realized through our talks that things had become a bit routine. We loved and valued each other, but had both become a little careless in showing it. Some of that is natural. Being married is not the same as dating, but we agreed we could do better. Simple things like going out for dinner, taking weekend trips, or going for walks in the park were all good ideas for how we could pay more attention to each other. Angie suggested having an Alex night or an Angie night, where the person in charge of the night would enjoy their favorite dinner and be taken care of by the other, doing things that make them happy. Finally, we talked about starting a family. Both of us were excited about having kids, and we had always felt that we would know when the right time came. I said, Angie, I still want to have children, but only after I'm sure our marriage will last. I don't think I'll feel sure about this anytime soon. Angie just nodded quietly. I understand, Alex. I worried about the same thing when I thought you were with Christina. How could I have kids with a man I didn't trust? And now it's the same for you. I took her hand and smiled. Yes, it is, but I really want to change that. This week has been wonderful, Angie. I'm still angry, but it's reminded me how much I love you. She leaned over to kiss me and wrapped her arms around me tightly. After we pulled apart, I said, one more thing. When I feel like we're back on track and everything is going to be okay, you'll know. I'll come to you and say, Angie, let's start a family. As we sat together on the flight home, I started to feel nervous. My time with Angie in Florida had felt like a dream. She had been loving and eager to show me how much I meant to her. Everything felt right. In many ways, I was reminded of why I fell in love with her. But that was in Florida, far away from our everyday lives and from the house where she had been with someone else. I worried about how my loving feelings would handle the reality of being back home. We would both return to work and the stress that came with it. Most importantly, I would be back to not knowing every moment where Angie was or what she was doing. I would have to either start trusting her or make myself anxious. Angie must have sensed my worries. She held my hand tightly during the flight and kept looking at me with concern. Finally, just before we landed, she turned to me and squeezed my hand. Honey, she said softly, almost a whisper, please don't give up on me now. Please believe everything I told you in Florida and remember all the good times we had. I know it will be tough. I can see some of your thoughts just by looking at your face. But I'm still the Angie who loves you and wishes she could take back her mistakes. Please give me a chance. I looked at her, seeing tears in her eyes, and managed a smile. I'll give you a chance, Angie, I promise. You're right, I'm anxious just thinking about what's coming, but let's hold on to the good feelings from this week. She smiled back, kissing my hand gently. It's a deal, she said. When we finally brought our bags into the house, I paused and took Angie's hand. Honey, can we sleep in the guest room for now? I'm not ready to go back to our bedroom, but I want you close to me. She nodded, looking a little worried but also understanding. That's fine, Alex. Both of us seemed to relax and stop worrying. We were just enjoying each other's company. I liked having Angie close because I could hold her. This time, she leaned into my hands and sighed softly. I gently touched her, and I could feel her excitement growing as she moved closer to me. When I sensed she was nearing her peak, I placed my hands on her hips, guiding her as we moved together. With a gasp, she reached her moment, and I felt a wave of joy and relief wash over me, too. We lay together, both feeling happy and relieved. It felt like we had just overcome something important, even if it seemed a bit silly. After a few moments, I said, Angie, why don't you give me your list? Looking nervous, she went to her suitcase and returned with a pad of paper. Climbing back into bed, she handed it to me and snuggled close. Her face tucked into my neck, and she said, Okay, Alex, I knew this would happen, but I'm really scared. Please don't push me away now. I gently kissed her hair. Angie, I know this won't be easy for either of us, but I still believe that talking about what happened will help us move forward. So I need to see what you've written. She nodded and held on to me tightly. I picked up the pad and began to read. The first time. At Tommy's apartment. He gave me a soda and rubbed my back. Then he took me into his bedroom. We didn't talk. He took off my clothes, then his. He lay me down and started kissing and touching me. I felt excited. He got a condom and we were together in the usual way. He was excited too. He moved fast and it didn't last long. I felt excited, but I didn't quite get there. We rested for a while, kissing and chatting. He went to clean up, then came back and wanted to be close again. He asked me to help him get ready, and I did. Then he put on another condom and we were together in another way. This time he lasted longer. He held and stroked me, and I felt joy while we were together. After a while, he finished. We rested a bit, then I took a shower, got dressed, and left. I paused, feeling a rush of emotions. I realized my jaw was tight. Angie lay beside me, likely sensing the tension in me, afraid to move or speak. You asked for this, Alex, I told myself silently. Now be strong and handle it. It wasn't that what she wrote surprised me. In my mind, I had imagined much worse things, much more upsetting than what I had just read. It was the harsh reality, the difference between my troubled thoughts and the plain truth of what Angie had experienced with another man. It hurt a lot. I took some deep breaths, feeling a bit calmer, and kept reading. The second time, 3 days later, at Tommy's apartment. We met in the afternoon. In the car on the way there, I changed from my work clothes. When I got to Tommy's, I was only wearing a top and a skirt without any undergarments. When I entered the apartment, Tommy kissed me. I took his hand and guided it up my leg. When he saw that I wasn't wearing anything underneath, he got really excited. He sat me down on a kitchen chair and knelt in front of me. He pushed my top down and touched my chest while he kissed me. I enjoyed it a lot, first right away and then again a few minutes later. After that, he carried me to his bed. We connected and I still had my skirt and top on. I put a condom on him first. I felt pleasure before he finished. After we rested, we showered together and shared some gentle touches. After drying off, we went back to bed and tried something new with me on top. We were both excited. I didn't have that feeling again, but still enjoyed it. When he was about to end, he guided me in a way I wasn't expecting. Then I showered again and went home. I paused again, thinking about my feelings. I was angry and sad, but it wasn't any worse than how I felt after reading about their first meeting. I decided to keep going, read it all, and get it over with. The other times were similar, with some differences. They met 4 times at his apartment and twice at our house. The second time, I heard them. That day, he got held up at school and arrived almost an hour late. They had a quick moment together, and when she wanted Tommy to leave, he insisted on another. Trusting I wouldn't get home early, she let him stay. As angry as I was, I also felt relieved that it could have been worse. He never went without protection, and she didn't let him do things I thought could be more risky. Even if it didn't make complete sense, those thoughts helped me feel a little better. I noticed that Angie was still close to me, trembling a bit. I said, "It's all done, Angie. I've read everything." She looked up, expecting me to explode, but I just looked back at her. "Yes, I'm mad," I said, "and I'm hurt the most. All I could think while reading was, how could you? But I was also relieved it wasn't worse. Honestly, Angie, I was worried that he would do something new with you that I couldn't. I'm sure you understand this. I was scared you might want to go back to Tommy for something he gave you that I didn't." She sat up in bed, looking at me with intensity. "There was nothing like that, Alex. It was exciting to be with someone new, just like you said. I knew it wasn't right. But there's nothing special about Tommy, really. He was quick and eager, but didn't pay much attention to how I felt. It never felt like he cared about me at all. It was just him wanting what he wanted." I looked at her. "And you liked being with him, too?" She turned red and looked down, nodding her head. I pulled her close and stroked her hair as I felt her start to cry. "It's okay, Angie. We can recreate what you had with him, but we will do it better. We can make new memories, all right?" She nodded against me, still in tears. We held on to each other until she felt better, and then we fell asleep without saying anything. I woke up to the smell of coffee and hurried to the kitchen. Angie, wearing her bathrobe, was smiling and getting ready to cook my favorite scrambled eggs. "Let's do something different today, Angie. How about I take you out for breakfast?" She looked surprised but happy, and I added, "Not what you expected from your always predictable husband, right? I'm trying to change that." She came over and embraced me tightly for a long moment. "As long as you stay the kind, loving man I married, I'm okay with some surprises." When I got to work, many smiling faces greeted me. People were glad to see me back, and maybe they were also happy that I seemed to be doing all right. John must have said something about my problems at home. I spent the morning catching up on everything I missed. Luckily, there were only a few small issues to deal with. My team had done a great job keeping things under control, and I thanked them for their hard work. The real challenge that day was not worrying about Angie, not thinking about what she might be doing at work or if she would contact Tommy. It was hard to trust her after everything that happened, and it was easy to think of the worst. In the afternoon, I got the call I'd been waiting for from Caleb, a security expert I reached out to in Florida. I knew about him because he had worked with our company before. I had asked Caleb to look into Tommy's life, especially his fiancée and what he was up to, and he found some important information. It turned out that Emily, Tommy's fiancée, was also a teacher. She taught history at a local high school. Even more interesting, she was related to the Hines family and had a lot of money. And I found out that Tommy wasn't just seeing Angie recently. He was also involved with a secretary named Darlene who worked in the principal's office at his school a couple of times a week. Caleb, that magician, had a collection of photos of Tommy and himself doing flips and tricks in Tommy's bed. Somehow, he had managed to get into an apartment across the alley from Tommy's place. That evening, I told Angie my plan for dealing with Tommy. It started with Angie writing a letter to Emily telling her that she and Tommy had been close while he was engaged to Emily. Angie didn't want to write the letter, but I was firm with her. I explained that it wouldn't be sent. I just wanted to use it to pressure Tommy. I then asked her directly if she cared more about protecting Tommy or about making things right with me. Her eyes watered a bit, but she wrote the letter without arguing further. Later that night, I set up a new Hotmail account and emailed Tommy. Using a fake name, I introduced myself as the superintendent for a nearby school district. I mentioned I had heard Tommy was a great teacher and was interested in possibly hiring him, offering a nice raise, too. Since taking a teacher mid-year was unusual, I suggested we meet privately one afternoon that week to talk it over. We met on Thursday afternoon in a local coffee shop. Tommy was a big guy with sandy hair and bright blue eyes. While he wasn't classically handsome, I could see why women might find him appealing. After we shook hands, he immediately started asking about the job. I raised my hand to stop him and said, "Why don't you read this first?" I handed him a copy of Angie's letter. After a few seconds, his face showed confusion and anger. "What is this?" he whispered, trying to keep his voice down. Staying calm, I replied, "Just read the rest, and then we can talk. Also, you should know that I have other copies with my friends, ready to be sent if anything happens to me or Angie." As Tommy read the letter, his face turned red with anger. He finally looked up at me and said, "What's going on here?" I smiled and said, "First, let me introduce myself. I'm Alex Ravenna, Angie's husband. Second, you've been involved with my wife, and I'm not pleased about it. Third, you're engaged to a wealthy young lady. If she sees this letter, it will be trouble for you. How am I doing so far, Tommy?" There was a tense silence as he glared at me, clearly weighing his options. He didn't have many. He said, "Emily wouldn't believe this letter. I could make her think it's nonsense." "Oh?" I replied. "What about the part where Angie describes your bedroom, right down to the nice picture of you and Emily on the dresser? And what about when she mentions those little birthmarks you have, one on your shoulder and another near your hip? How are you going to explain this, Mr. Smooth?" "Fine, fine," he shot back. "What do you want?" "It's simple," I said. "I promise Emily won't see this letter. In exchange, I need a key to your apartment, and I can use it for 3 weeks. "What are you talking about? You were with my wife in your apartment, Tommy. Now I want to be with her there, too. I can go to your bedroom, your kitchen table, wherever, for 3 weeks. After that, we're done. You won't see me again, you won't hear from me. I'll give back your key, and I'll throw the letter away." He just stared at me, probably thinking why I didn't want more. "That's it? 3 weeks and then I'm free of you?" I nodded. "And how do I know you won't send the letter anyway?" "Good question, Tommy," I replied. "You don't. You have to trust me. But there's not much choice here. I promise you, after those 3 weeks, you'll get your key back and you won't have to deal with me or Angie again." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Okay, fine. But when will you be there?" "I'll be there only on weekday afternoons, right? That's when you were with Angie, so you need to stay away from 2:30 to 6 o'clock every weekday for these 3 weeks. Nights and weekends are yours. Enjoy." After a few more exchanges, we got up. We walked a few stores down to a hardware store where Tommy got copies of his building and apartment keys made. He handed the keys to me with a grumpy look. I smiled and gave him the copy of Angie's letter. "You can get rid of this one. I have more. Today's the 3rd. If you don't try anything tricky, I'll send these keys back on the 24th. Then we'll say goodbye." I waited to see if he would say anything else. He didn't. With a shrug, he walked away. I found myself whistling when I got home. I must be feeling better. When I walked into the kitchen, I saw Angie at the stove and Connie sitting at the table. Both looked a bit uneasy. I said hi and went over to give Angie a kiss. Before I could talk to Connie, she said, "Hi, Alex. I need to get going. Hope to see you both soon." "She seemed a bit off, Angie," I said after a moment. "What's going on?" Angie replied. "Connie came over about an hour ago and we caught up. As you can guess, she asked a lot of questions, but I kept most of them at bay. I told her we're working on our relationship and had a good time in Florida. But I also confessed that I felt awful about what happened with Tommy, and that I would have to keep our marriage details private even though she's a good friend." She didn't argue with that at all. I'm pretty sure she knows that all the talk about Henry played a part in what I did, and the issues we're facing now. Is that what that guilty look was for? "I think so," Angie replied. I quickly shared my chat with Tommy. Her face showed a mix of excitement and worry. I told her I wanted to start right away and asked her to meet me at his apartment tomorrow at 3 p.m. "Okay, Alex, but I have to say, I'm feeling a bit nervous about this. I want to do what you want, but it just makes me feel guiltier, you know? Like I'm going back to a bad place." I wrapped my arms around her and patted her hair. "I get that. But let's remember our goal, to enjoy each other and make some nice memories even with the tough ones we have. When I think of you and Tommy, I want to fill those thoughts with fun memories of us together, just like what you did with him." She pulled back a bit to look into my eyes. "I don't think I deserve you, you know. Instead of punishing me, you are so caring and patient with me." I replied seriously, "Maybe you don't deserve me right now. You've hurt me. But I love you, and looking back on our relationship, you've brought me happiness like no one else. I hope that in a few weeks or months, we'll both feel like you deserve me." She looked deeply into my eyes, then kissed me softly, and for a long time. The 3 weeks of writing about Angie's situation were strange but enjoyable. I knew I would have to deal with feelings of anger, and I did. But being in Tommy's apartment also felt thrilling. It almost felt like we were having an affair ourselves. Angie, as I expected, was eager to make this good for me and fully support my plan. On the first day, we stuck pretty close to our plan. I offered her a soda, gave her a shoulder rub, and said nice things before leading her to the bedroom. Without saying anything, I gently helped her out of her clothes, and then I took mine off, too. She seemed nervous and a bit scared. I laid her down and held her, and when I felt excited, I got really caught up in the moment. Even though I had been with her for years, the situation felt so strange and different. I lost myself in that experience, and her soft sounds made everything feel more intense. Afterward, as we lay there talking and kissing, it still felt unusual. I didn't act like Tommy, but our conversation stayed away from any ideas that tied us as husband and wife. I mostly talked about how beautiful and exciting she was, and how much I loved being with her. After our first time together, Angie seemed to relax. She lost the nervous look she had at first. About half an hour later, she took charge and moved closer for another round. She kissed me softly, using her gentle touches in a way that felt nice. Kissing feels even better after you've already been close once. At first, things start soft and slow, and then both of us can enjoy the feeling as we get more excited together. When she seemed really aroused, I gently guided her onto her hands and knees at the end of the bed. I loved this position and was eager for a long time together. Part of me wanted to make this experience even better for her than before. As I entered her, I focused on taking my time, watching her reactions and making sure she felt as good as I did. We stayed connected this way for nearly half an hour. I loved holding her, teasing her gently, and I brought her joy once like this. Then I held her hips, and we moved together for a while. Later, I touched her in a way that made her gasp, and she seemed to enjoy it. At that moment, I also reached my peak of excitement. While we showered in Tommy's bathroom, we didn't say much but smiled a lot as we washed each other. That night at home was quiet, not uncomfortable, just relaxed and comfortable. It felt nice to hold her close as we went to sleep, both too tired for anything more. A few days later at Tommy's place, Angie seemed more confident than ever. Maybe it was because the first time had gone well, or perhaps she seemed more playful. When I sat her in a kitchen chair and kissed her, she responded happily. She let herself go, pulling my hair and making soft sounds. I was so excited that I took her into the bedroom to be even closer, feeling immense pleasure. By the time of our fourth meeting in our own bedroom, I felt a bit worried. Of all the moments Angie had shared, the thought of her being with Tommy there was hard to take. She must have sensed how I felt because, for the first time during these weeks, she did something different. She led me into the room where she planned to sit me down on the bed and share another special moment with me, as she had done before. As she noticed the look of pain on my face, she paused for a moment, looked into my eyes, and softly said, "I'm really sorry, dear." Somehow that made things better. We kept playing our game, and my discomfort faded a lot. She showed me warmth and care, and when I felt more excited, I suggested we switch positions, not thinking about what had happened with her and Tommy. We enjoyed each other for a long time. It became a game to see who could tease the other without reaching the end too quickly. Eventually, she had to pull back to catch her breath as I made her very happy using my lips and fingers. Our next time together was the last in Tommy's apartment, and I had a few parting surprises for him. I started by giving Angie a special treat while she lay on her stomach on the kitchen table, making sure to leave a bit of a mess. Later, when we were in the bedroom just before I reached my peak, I stood on a chair near his dresser. I let myself go, making sure to aim some of it onto Tommy's picture of him and his fiancée. I couldn't help but think that he would have to deal with that. For our final time in his bed, we decided to try something different that Angie and I had done a few times. We took it slow and easy, making sure to be gentle. We were quite happy together, but I had one more trick up my sleeve. When we were done, I made sure to clean myself off on Tommy's sheets, and I had Angie do the same. Just one more surprise for him. A few days later, in our own bed, we decided to recreate a special moment from before. We played around some more, resting in between, and I asked for another round even though it was getting late. We were on our sides, our legs tangled, moving closer together, feeling the excitement build. "Should I speed up?" I asked, a bit out of breath. "Are you worried about your husband coming home and hearing us?" Angie smiled at me and said, still moving against me, "You are the only person I want. I don't care who hears us." I smiled back, pulling her close, and soon after I felt myself reaching that special moment. Later that night, after a shower and dinner, I was in my study going over some bills when Angie walked in. She had just washed her hair, wearing a robe, looking fresh and lovely. She came over, sat next to me, and took my hand. "You might know what I want to ask you, Alex. Where do we stand now? We've talked about my past. I'm glad it turned out better than I feared. It was exciting and full of love, creating some beautiful memories that helped push away the bad ones. It really bothers me what I did to you. I care about you so much for not just leaving me. I'm grateful you found a way for us to stay together. You made me feel like I was important to you. But I still have some worries, and I'm not sure how you feel." I gently pulled her into my lap, and she settled in against me with her head on my shoulder. "What's on my mind is that I love you. But if you ever betray me again, I will be very upset." I said this calmly and then kissed her hair. "I can't say I'm completely past what you did, not yet. But I choose to try to stay together. You are worth it. It still feels like the right choice. You should still be a little worried. It's hard for me to fully trust you right now, and it might take a long while. But I know you love me, Angie. I see that you want to be with me and that you're doing your best to show me, and you do make me happy." She didn't say anything more, and we sat quietly together for a long time. About a week later, I had the chat with Connie that I'd been looking forward to. Angie invited her over for coffee, but when she arrived, Angie was out and I was there waiting. "Come in, Connie. I asked Angie to call you. I want to talk for a few minutes." She looked surprised and a bit nervous as I poured us 2 cups of coffee. I sat down and looked at her. Then I said, "How is your friend, Henry?" She gasped, putting her cup down quickly and spilling some coffee. Her face turned pale and she asked, "Who's Henry?" in a shaky voice. I just laughed. "That's not very convincing, Connie. Henry was the guy you were with for a while last year, the one who Brad didn't know about. Just a fun fling, right? You remember now? Oh, and by the way, Angie didn't tell me about it. I found out on my own." She looked at me, biting her lip, clearly scared. "Okay, Alex, I'm listening. What do you want to say?" I smiled kindly and said, "In short, Connie, I know the truth." She gasped again, and I continued. "Remember the strong opinions you shared about cheating with me and Angie a few weeks ago? You said that cheating makes your partner feel less important, and that you couldn't respect them fully because of it. Do you feel that way with Brad? Does your cheating make you feel like you belittled him? Does it feel good to have a secret that's not so nice? She wouldn't look at me. Remember what you said about my pretend affair with Christina Blodgett? You said it was wrong and terrible. Even if I hadn't told Angie, it would still have broken her trust. So now, Connie, we need to think about how to deal with your terrible mistake, don't we? Her hands were shaking. She asked, "Are you going to tell Brad, Alex? He'll leave me, you know he will. Is that what you want?" I stayed quiet for a long moment, letting her look at my serious face. Finally, I said, "No, Connie, I like Brad, and I don't want him to be hurt like I have been these last few weeks. He loves you and trusts you. I don't think it would help anyone to ruin his happiness. But I do think some kind of payback is fair, right? Since we both agree that what you did was wrong, don't you owe Brad something?" She seemed a bit less scared now. "If you won't tell Brad, Alex, I will do almost anything you ask." "What I want is simple, Connie. You need to make things right. You're going to show Brad how loved and appreciated he is. You should be careful, though. If you go overboard right away, he might start to wonder if something is up. That would ruin the point. You'll start by cooking his favorite meals more often, telling him you love him more, going golfing or watching football with him more often, and most importantly, you'll treat him kindly and make sure he feels good." She started to smile a little. It seemed like what I wanted was easier than what she thought. "Do you and Brad talk much about your relationship? Do you share what you like or know what makes him happy?" "No, Alex. We have a good time, but we've never tried many new things, I guess." "Well, it's your turn to take the lead now, Connie. Buy some nice clothes and see what makes him smile, then get more of those. Ask him to have fun with you in different spots around the house and see what he really enjoys. Then do that again. Make sure you're giving him more attention and care without him having to ask. And let him show you the same love too if he doesn't already. Plan a weekend getaway for just the two of you and be playful together for those 2 days. Do you understand what I mean?" Connie's face, which was pale a few moments ago, was now red with embarrassment. She wasn't used to this topic with me. "Yes, Alex, I can do that." "And if he starts to get suspicious, you can easily explain to him." I found myself unable to stop, just hoping to keep going long enough to help her feel great. Suddenly, her happy sounds reminded me of something I had heard 3 months ago when I came home and caught her with Tommy in our bed. That memory hit me hard, but soon it was replaced by a much happier one, of Angie and me sharing our own special time in that same bed. I thought about our trip to Florida, with her being so sweet and loving. I remembered the fun we had in Tommy's apartment, laughing together in his kitchen. So I kept going, moving in and out, gently touching her. Then all those memories faded away, and I was filled with the joy of Angie's happy cry as we connected deeply. We lay there quietly, both of us tired but happy and content. We didn't feel the need to talk at first, but after a few moments, I softly touched her arms and shoulders. She kissed my arm, then turned to kiss me on the lips. I grinned at her. "I talked to Brad this morning." "And?" "It seems like he and Connie are enjoying a second honeymoon. He was so excited to share their weekend trip. She wore some nice clothes, and they had fun in the hot tub and went out to dinner where she wore a short dress. He asked how we were doing, but he could hardly wait for me to answer before telling his story. I think it's safe to say Connie is keeping her end of the deal." Angie smiled at me. "And how are we doing, Alex?" "I think we're doing really well, Angie. Really well. Hey, audience, if you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.